Welcome to Newsmax TV. I'm Kathleen Walter. His name is in the mix of possible Republican presidential candidates for 2012. A very special guest and friend of Newsmax, former House Speaker Newt Gingrich. Speaker Gingrich is the author of the popular new book, To Save America, Stopping Obama's Secular Socialist Machine. He's also a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute in Washington, D.C., where he just wrapped up a major national security address. Welcome back to Newsmax TV, Mr. Speaker.
It's good to have a chance to be with you once again, and it's always fun to be on Newsmax.
Thank you very much. Well, in your speech today, you blamed the left for what you call willful blindness to the forces threatening America. How should the U.S. be confronting this challenge?
I think that you have to start with the idea that our secular elites find it very hard to understand the power of religion and find it very hard to take seriously threats to America. They're always excusing, apologizing, explaining people who are our mortal enemies. Radical Islamists are people who want to impose on the rest of us Sharia, which is a form of medieval law which would fundamentally end America as we've known it. And there are really disturbing signs that some places, such as a recent court case in New Jersey, you see judges beginning to succumb to this kind of reasoning. So I think we need a new strategy, a much bolder strategy, and a much clearer sense of what we're fighting for and what's at stake.
And what do you think that strategy should involve?
Well, I think it's got to involve much as the Cold War did, a combination of political, economic, diplomatic, social, cultural, intellectual, and military means. But all of them have to go together. You have to have a complete strategy that enables you to isolate and defeat the radicals while empowering and modernizing those who are prepared to live in the modern world.
Well, in your speech, you said that U.S. failures in national security should be a national scandal. Besides radical Islam, what other threats do you see?
Well, let me just say, on the scandal side, it starts with the fact that despite all the billions we spent, all the reorganization, the Director of National Intelligence, the Homeland Security Department, we had no warning of the Christmas Day bomber on the airplane over Detroit until his bomb failed to go off and his pants began to smoke. We had no warning of the car bomb in Times Square until the bomb failed to go off and a T-shirt vendor reported to the police that the car was smoking. So we should have a serious national inquiry into why, after 9 years since 9/11, we are still so unable to identify and isolate people who want to kill us. I think that's a key part of the difference between where we are. The only other major threat we have is, frankly, getting our economy back online so that we can create jobs and be the most innovative, productive economy in the world so we can successfully compete with China and India. If we are able to isolate and defeat the radical Islamists and we're able to compete successfully with China and India, we probably have no major national security problem in the next 50 years.
After September 11th, you said that the Bush administration had made a mistake in calling this a war on terror. Hindsight is 2020, but would we be safer today if it had been called something else?
Well, I think if we'd said early on that we're faced with a long struggle with radical Islamists and that this is a war that involves breaking their capacity to impose Sharia on the rest of us, we'd be much better off today. We'd have a much better understanding of what the challenge is. We would have used different strategies in some places, but we'd also be much more direct and aggressive in trying to defend America from the imposition of this kind of radical dictatorship.
Now, government secrets pouring out through Wikileaks. What kind of damage does that do to the Afghanistan war effort, and how does that put our military men and women at risk?
Well, I think the release of these documents should be regarded as an act of treason. When you release 70 or 80,000 documents, you don't know how many people you're going to kill, because buried in those documents are names, dates, events of people who've been trying to help America. I think it's unconscionable that somebody who has access to those documents released them, and frankly, I think we should be very aggressive about the website that was set up, WikiLeaks, and I think we should also be very, very strong in our condemnation of the newspapers that published them.
Okay. The Mosque at Ground Zero. What can the President and Congress do about this? And if you were President, what would you do?
Well, the first thing the President and Congress could do is declare the area around the World Trade Center a national military battlefield, because that was a battle. It is part of a real war. More Americans were killed at the World Trade Center than at any place in the United States since the Civil War. And I think that if we had a clear statement that only appropriate buildings and appropriate uses should occur near the battlefield, that you would then have a level of control we don't have right now over that area.
All right, let's switch gears here real quickly. In the Senate, 4 Republicans have now broken ranks and said they'll confirm Elena Kagan to the Supreme Court. What do you think about Kagan's nomination?
Well, I think Kagan is in many ways much more radical than people think. She seems to have no understanding of the origins of American rights before the Constitution. She seems to have no real appreciation of the danger of Sharia, which I think she welcomed Saudi money to have professorships at the Harvard Law School. And so I would have been very skeptical of her as a nominee for the court.
On immigration, a judge has granted an injunction over some of the most controversial aspects of the new Arizona immigration law. What advice would you have for Governor Jan Brewer and others who support the law in its original form?
Well, first of all, Governor Brewer ought to promptly file suit against the federal government to make them pay for all the cost Arizona is dealing with. Cost in schools, cost in prisons, cost in hospitals. I mean, if the federal government's basis of its lawsuit is that it has sole responsibility, then it ought to have sole responsibility. And if I were her, I'd present him with a bill for several $billion on behalf of the people of Arizona who are currently suffering because of the incompetence and failure of the federal government.
Speaking of lawsuits, 21 states are challenging the constitutionality of the new healthcare reform law. A recent CNN poll finds only 33% approve of how President Obama is handling healthcare. You've served as House Speaker. How possible is it to get this repealed?
Well, I believe if you have a Republican Congress and a Republican president in February or March of 2013, the bill will be repealed. I think when you only have 1/3 of the country supporting something in a free society, it cannot stand. And this bill is so bad. If you go to healthtransformation.net, the Center for Health Transformation has created 2 charts. One is 3 foot by 6 foot and shows you the 159 new agencies, offices, and commissions created by the bill. The other is 50 square feet, 5 feet by 10 feet, and has all of the deadlines out to 2020. And you look at these 2 charts side by side, you know this bill can't possibly work.
Mr. Speaker, how likely is it that the Republicans will win back the House and or Senate this fall?
I think we have a better than 50-50 chance of winning the House. I think John Boehner is probably going to be the Speaker. I think we have about 1 chance in 3 right now of winning the Senate, but that gets better with every week as people realize the choice is between job-killing Democrats and job-creating Republicans. I think at 9.5% unemployment, people are pretty fed up with the job-killing party and would like to see something new happen.
Are there any races in particular that you're watching closely?
Well, I think it's going to be interesting to see whether or not Harry Reid can avoid the cost of 14.5% unemployment in Nevada. I think that Scott Walker will be a great governor of Wisconsin. John Kasich will be a great governor of Ohio. So there are a number of very interesting races out there.
Representative Michelle Bachmann told Newsmax TV earlier this week that the financial reform law is a disaster. Do you agree? And how will it impact everyday Americans?
The financial reform law increased the power of Washington, D.C., increased the power of bureaucracies, increased the amount of uncertainty, killed American jobs, and made it easier for Frankfurt, London, Tokyo, and Shanghai to become the financial centers of the world. This will be seen as one more job-killing bill by an administration which consistently has been destroying American jobs.
All right. Well, there's been lots of talk about the Bush tax cuts that are set to expire at the end of the year. Former Senator Fred Thompson told us earlier about his RenewTheCuts.com petition drive to keep the tax reductions in place. What do you think would happen to the economy and consumer confidence if those tax cuts are not renewed?
If we have large tax increases in January, this economy will sink deeper into recession. There will be higher unemployment. The recovery will be longer. This was exactly the mistake made in 1937-38, and it created a second mini depression. I think it's very dangerous, and I think the simple battle cry ought to be no tax increase in 2011, period. Keep current law exactly as it is through 2011.
If you were in office, you were president, what would you do to get the American economy rolling again?
Well, at American Solutions, we have a program for jobs, and Congressman Jordan of Ohio has introduced a bill, the Economic Freedom Act, which has 5 major tax cuts which we endorse. 50% cut in the Social Security and Medicare tax, both for the employer and the employee. 0 capital gains tax, which is the rate in China. 12.5% corporate tax, which is the rate in Ireland. 100% write-off annually for small businesses to buy new equipment to have the best most modern equipment for our workers, and permanent elimination of the death tax so people have an incentive to work and save their entire lifetime. We think those 5 tax changes would dramatically accelerate economic growth and help the economy.
All right, Mr. Speaker, I want to ask you a few more questions that are related to elections. The DNC is launching a new campaign to rebrand all Republicans as part of the Republican Tea Party and depict them as way outside the mainstream. What do you see as the role of the Tea Party, and what should the GOP message be?
Well, first of all, I think the Republican Tea Party will beat the Democratic Socialist Party. So I think if they want to get into name calling, that's pretty easy. Second, I like the Tea Party movement. I encouraged Sharon Cooper back in 1994 to write a book called Taxpayers' Tea Party, which has just been reissued with Rush Limbaugh writing the introduction. In 1994, I led a group to Boston, and we had a Taxpayers' Tea Party in Boston as part of our Contract with America campaign. I think the Tea Partiers I meet with around the country when I go out with American Solutions and hold meetings are serious people studying the Constitution, trying to find a way to get back to balanced, limited government with balanced budgets and with much less power in Washington, and I approve of their general direction.
There's talk that you're serious about a potential White House bid in 2012. Are you going to run for president?
Well, Callista and I, along with our family, will make that decision in February or March. For the moment, I'm totally focused on trying to help Republicans win the biggest possible election this fall.
Who do you think should be on the short list of Republicans who are running for office?
Well, there are going to be lots of Republicans running. Governor Romney, clearly, Governor Palin, Governor Huckabee, Governor Mitch Daniel, Governor Haley Barbour, Governor Tim Pawlenty. I think John Thune, the senator from South Dakota, is going to get in. Ron Paul's probably going to run again. So I think it'll be a lively campaign. There'll be a lot of good candidates.
Do you think Sarah Palin would be a strong candidate?
I think she's already a very strong personality and has the potential to be a very strong candidate.
Governor Palin recently said that President Obama has failed. How would you describe his presidency?
Well, I think that he's very good at being a celebrity and not very good at being president. I mean, he's perfect on The View, but not too good in the Oval Office.
All right, former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, thanks so much for joining us. Again, it is always good to see you here on Newsmax TV.
Good to be with you.
And thank you for watching Newsmax TV.